When the lights come up, I see a drum set to my left. Sean enters the space. It's dark. Sean's shoulders start moving back and forth. A neck roll. I can see a hint of a flowery dress or a skirt that moves in time with the gyrations. Sean's arms start to move as well. The hips are the impetus of the movement, but the arms sway as an aftershock of the movement. There's a looseness in the movement. A ricocheting effect from where the movement originates into the hip, travels up the spine, out of the top of the head. Now Andy's at the drums. I see Andy banging on the drums, tapping them with his hands. There's about 7 different drums in the set. He moves between them in a rhythmic way, whereas Sean's movement is sporadic and flowing. The lights are still very dim. I catch glimpses of lace and a flower pattern on the dress that Sean's wearing. I think Andy's wearing a gray shirt. The lights come up now, and I can see more fullness on what's happening on the stage. The drums are red and shiny. I can see more details of the movement that Sean is doing. How the fingers come into play. The circular movement of the legs. How the paint on Sean's nails matches with the lighter color in the dress. Sean's twisting back and forth, moving in a circular way in one direction, and then reversing his course. Andy's concentrating on the drums. There's a glittery material attached to one half of it, and it glistens whenever he taps on the drums on that side. Sean's arms move sort of like tentacles, which I can picture looseness to them. From the shoulder joint out, they're almost jointless. There's a sense of contrast between Andy's stoicism at the drums, his simple, syncopated movements on the drums, his concentration downward, versus Sean's fluidity and looseness. Sean's starting to take up more space on the stage. The movement's carrying Sean in front of Andy, behind him, as he circles around. Their dynamic shifts with those spatial changes. The relationship between the sound and the movement changes. Perhaps one becomes more independent from the other. And then when they grow closer, spatially, they also grow closer energetically. Sean reaches upward, an arm circles around, collapsing downward. A repeated reaching up, collapsing, reaching up, collapsing, reaching up, collapsing. There's a wonderful fringe on Sean's dress that mirrors the quality of the metallic fringe that Andy has hanging off of his drum set. The fringe on Sean's dress also almost moves in an opposite manner. When Sean moves left, the fringe flings itself right. The layers on the bottom half of Sean's dress shake up and down as well as Sean reaches up and collapses down. Andy's moved to a thinner set of drumsticks and is making light tapping motions on them. He's got one of the drumsticks pressed against the top of one drum, and he is tapping the base of the other stick, or he taps the base of the stick with the other one. Now he's drawing circles on the top of the drums with the sticks. Sean takes 2 or 3 steps forward while the hands flit between palms facing in and then palms facing out, facing in, then facing out. The lighting is dimming again, creating a warmer tone. Sean's movements transition quickly now between sharp and flitting and longer pauses, maybe with a slow release of the arm. A slow turn of the head, but then bursting back into brief explosions of movement. A twitch or a flick, a hip jut. Andy's watching Sean. Sean is noticing Andy, but not visually. Sean's back is to Andy. Sean's arm circles up, and then it drops in a very lackadaisical way, very casual. Andy leaves the stage. So it's just Sean, now visually looking towards where Andy was. The emptiness now, save for the drum set. The lights continue to dim. Now there's a real sense of contrast on both the drum set and Sean's body. The shadows are really dark, but where the light is still, it's very bright. Alone on the stage, Sean is continuing the pattern of brief bursts of lively movement and then longer, thoughtful pauses, pensive moments. The arm moves in a circular way around the body. It moves up, but then drops, the weight falling quickly downward. As Sean does a small foot touching movement, the lights fade completely. Back up again. The lighting is not up entirely. It's still very dark, but I can see Sean and Andy moving around on stage, this time in a more utilitarian way. Sean is removing the tinsel from the drum set, spreading it out on the ground. I can see Andy picking up something and moving it behind him, a drum set, but he quickly fades into the darkness. The glitter of the tinsel still shows through despite how dark it is, which is very nice. So just the white tops of the drums. Andy comes back in, picks up a drum, and then fades into the background with it. Sean emerges to take a drum. and fades into the background with it as well. Andy moves the last of the drums, so now the only thing that I can see that remains on the stage is the microphone setup that was above the drum set. But it's almost entirely black. Something is being rolled out, but it's still just too dark to see. Sean and Andy are rolling out it's still very dark. It looks like a series of symbols and other metal objects hanging from something. The lights come back on more fully now. I can see the apparatus that Sean and Andy have set up. It looks like a series of pots and pans almost hanging from a clothing rack, one of the rolling ones. Andy stands with his back towards the camera. Every once in a while, using drumsticks to tap onto one of the metal pieces. His body shows a great deal of care in his movement. He's being very sensitive about it. He's still wearing all gray. Sean stands on the other side of the apparatus setup. He's just walked out from behind it. Previously facing the camera, but now, as the movement becomes more complex, I see maybe a pale blue shirt, a button down, underneath what's maybe a darker blue dress. But there's a little bit of light blue coming out of the bottom, so it might be two dresses layered. Andy's tapping is more persistent now. A metallic kind of clang. And Sean's movement is growing in conjunction to that. Arms are outstretched, now swinging in a very casual manner. A foot tapping out in front, then crossing over. I can see Sean's knee pads more clearly in this outfit. Sean stands isolated for a moment, one side moving together as if there was a metal rod on one side of the body, but almost immediately breaking out of that into a more fluid, holistic, energetic traveling throughout the body. Sean swings a leg out to the side, carries it across the body, and that brings Sean into a crouch, but almost immediately up again. Sean's arms cross, then fling upwards in a turn. Sean walks off stage. We just see Andy. He uses drumsticks with a padded head on them, tapping different metal objects on the apparatus now. I see wind chimes, something that looks like a walk, cymbals. With great care, he's tapping them. I can tell Andy's not just smacking intermittently. He's putting a great deal of intention into each metal part that he's activating. Sean has re-entered. Immediately moving through all parts of the body. A leg swings up, a head circles around, arms crisscross in front of the body, weave together, fingers outstretched and coming back, a collapse downwards, and the head moving back and forth on the neck, swinging around into a turn, the arms kind of unfurl upwards. Sean's moving with a sort of melancholy quality. Slowly raises a leg at the knee, brings it around the body, shifts the torso towards it, moves the arms up above the head, crossed at the wrist. Looking up and then down. Andy slowly moves the drumsticks with the padded top, drawing them very gently across one of the larger metal pieces. His focus is entirely downwards on this piece. It's towards the bottom of the whole setup. His back is still towards us. Sean slowly walks behind the apparatus, the closest that Sean and Andy have been physically towards one another. Then Sean moves out to the other side, torso is sort of moving like a tree in the wind or something, maybe a flower in the wind. There's the kind of back and forthness to it, swaying in one direction and then the other, and the limbs are along for the ride. They kind of are flung inwards, curling in, and then extend back in a way that really spreads the upper body, the rib cage, open. Crouching, Sean swirls around in a turn. His arms sort of suspended at the sides. On the ground now. Sean's swinging the legs back and forth on the ground. Push with the arms, releasing onto the back. A leg extending up in the air and then over the body. And the feet flexed. The movement really rippling through the limbs, in the arms, starting in the shoulder, pushing across the body. The hand is the final thing that's flexed and then it curls in. The lighting transitions to something more red, with more intensity. As it fades down and Sean walks behind the metal framework that Andy's playing on, Sean's body disappears with glimpses. The lighting moves through the metal pieces coming through. Moving back towards the light, there's a high contrast on the bodies and the instrument again. What's dark is very dark, almost pitch black, but what is lit is a very deep red color. Both Sean and Andy's faces are lit at the moment, both in profile facing left. There's a gentle movement of some of the pieces on Andy's instrumental setup. They wave back and forth as Andy's gently ricocheting against them. Whereas Sean, moving at a steady pace, is experiencing more extreme falls and rebounds, swings, holds, collapses. The lights fade out completely. They come back on again to the same stage lighting, intermediary lighting we had before. Sean and Andy slowly move off stage, the clothing rack with instruments on it. They bring it to the side and somebody pulls back one of the curtains. So we see it being moved off into one of the backstage areas of Fringe Arts. The lighting is very blue. We just see their shadows. And then they disappear again. From the pitch black again, they emerge, more features becoming more apparent the closer they get to downstage. And they roll out, both of them, a table with a sort of gauzy material over it that they're very carefully draping along the sides, revealing a xylophone-ish instrument. I know that's not what it is, Andy, but to the untrained eye, it looks like a large xylophone. Sean walks off stage after arranging the gauzy material around it. And Andy places the sticks. The lights fade to darkness and then come back up with the red lighting again. Andy walks out first. And he begins to play. With one stick, he's tapping against the keys of the xylophone speedily in a very staccato manner. I see him from the side. His face in profile is lit with the red. I can see he's looking down. We see him from a new angle. And the camera slowly pans over towards the red light, and we see Sean emerge out from the darkness, moving along the floor, rolling over, a leg swinging and carrying the weight of the body from the side along the ground, upright into a seated position, and then cascading down again. Sean is sort of tumbling through, cascading through, being upright on the floor and then giving back down to it again, and then coming upright and giving the weight back down again. I see a dress, a similar material to the gauze that's draped around Andy's instrument. There's a certain opacity to it. You can see the outline of the form more, especially with the lighting. His neck swings around in one direction, but then reverses course, turning the other way. And then Sean pauses. Pausing for a while, looking off towards the light, and then re-emerging into movement with little walks forward. The steps now carrying Sean back and forth in a kind of wave-like manner. An arm circling up and outward in a very offering kind of gesture. The arms come up, but then they slowly, pensively move down, then back against the body. And that collapses Sean's entire body against the ground. That movement takes Sean to the floor. And he's now working with 3 sticks, 2 in one hand and 1 in the other. And he's sliding them along the different slabs of the xylophone instrument. John brings the legs close into the torso and stands up. Taking steps once again towards the side light, but then wafting back again, the arms gently moving up and then getting caught in a larger spiral of movement that starts with the hands above the body and takes the whole form around in a circle. The lighting changes to blue. Sort of blown about the stage. Moving is sort of in reaction to a wind that carries the body in one direction and then the other, almost pushing against the torso, and then the limbs, the arms and the legs are swinging in reaction to that. Wavering, responding, recalibrating. In a gentle way. A knee lifts up. And he's placed in such a way that he's facing Sean. He's facing the camera. He's not looking directly at either of them, but we see more of the finer points of what he's doing. The red returns in the lighting, but the blue stays. So on the back parts of the bodies in the instrument, the blue light is still there, but then on the other side, the red, and there's a purple transition point between, kind of like an ombre effect. As Sean is moving around, different parts of the body become very brightly red, and then with a turn suddenly shift to being entirely blue. Changes quickly between blue and red, and then blue, and then red again. His arms circle around. I can still see Sean suspending, letting the weight carry the body backwards, ricocheting, rebounding. The arms float up and down. The red light recedes. Andy's walked away. And now the light entirely recedes. Everything is entirely black. The light comes on just enough for Sean and Andy to take a bow.